Disagreements are just a part of life. It doesn't matter whether you are with your family or people who share your same basic values. You're going to meet people who have differences of opinion, who see things differently. However, I wonder if when you're engaging in a debate or a disagreement, if you ever ask yourself the question, what am I hoping to accomplish? What is the point of me sharing what I believe? What am I hoping to achieve? My guess is most of you don't ask that question. Why? Well, when we think about arguments and disagreements being so common, we just naturally slide in and out of these disagreements, and we can be very unreflective in our approach. However, I think if you ask yourself the question, what am I hoping to accomplish? I think it will give you focus. I think it will give you purpose when you do engage in an argument. And I think you can find far more satisfying results. How do you think most people, if they're honest, would answer that question? What am I hoping to accomplish? I think you can get a variety of answers. I think you're going to get some people who just want to show, you're wrong. You're wrong. That's my point. And I think you're going to get some people who want to demonstrate, hey, this is my opinion and I'm right. Okay? And I think a more immature position is, hey, I just want you to know what I think. I want my voice to be heard. And I'm not saying that's all bad, but the reason why I think that is more of an immature, juvenile position, that sense of, I want you to know what I think, is, look, as we age, hopefully we become wiser, right? And we understand, you know what, not everybody needs to know what I actually think about everything, okay? The world wouldn't be a very good place if everybody was finding their voice and regularly sharing their voice on all things, okay? What I want to encourage you to do is that when you ask yourself that question, what am I hoping to accomplish? I think the most satisfying, helpful answer you can give is, I want to win you over to the truth. I want to persuade you to accept what's wise, what's right. I think those answers are far better, those synonymous answers there. Why? Well, first, we have to acknowledge that there's an assumption being made, that I know what the truth is. And there's another assumption that my life is aligned with the truth, or my life is aligned with what is right. If you can answer yes to all those, then I think you're in a great position, okay? But what I want to do is I want to talk about tactics in this video. Tactics that can put you in a position to convince another person of the truth, to win them over to this truth that you subscribe to, biblical truth, hopefully. And I want to start by looking at one of the Proverbs that's going to demonstrate for us yet again the value of knowing this ancient biblical wisdom. Our proverb is found in chapter 15, verse 1, where it says, "A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This is a beautiful proverb. It is a beautiful proverb in its simplicity. Anyone can understand this, even a child. And so because of that, it's not necessary for me to do a long exposition to help you understand what it means. Just read it. It's pretty self-explanatory. And when you hear it, it just rings true, doesn't it? This is something that doesn't just resonate with the experience of one person. It's something that resonates with the experience of all of us. one of the main points, I think, is that tone matters. Tone matters. When we're speaking to someone, our tone of voice is very important. If you want to understand the power of tone, you could talk to a musician. Tone can evoke feelings. It often does. Let's just take one example, a guitar. An acoustic guitar that's playing praise and worship music, or is playing, say, some kind of a folksy tune, that is going to evoke a very different feeling than an electric guitar, and in which the volume is turned up very loud and there's high levels of distortion in the tone. That's going to evoke a very different feeling. Sounds, the sound of your voice, the tone is important. But you know what? It's not just your tone of voice that's important. The tone of the words you choose is also important. Certain words have an inbuilt tone. I am against abortion. I'm against abortion. In the United States, people who are against abortion are referred to as pro-life. But let's say that I'm having a conversation with someone who supports abortion, but I want to win them over to my side. Help them understand that abortion extinguishes a life in the womb. I've got to be careful in the words that I choose. If I address that person as a baby killer, boom, they're gone. Why? Because I've dialed up the emotion. When I label someone with something that's inflammatory, well, it's going to be no surprise. It's going to inflame them. It's going to generate more emotion in them. And you need to understand this. The more emotion injected into a situation, the more that emotion crowds out reason. That person's not going to be able to hear you. They're not going to be open to your reasoning, whatever evidence you give. So you have to be careful in the tone that you use. Well, why is tone so important? Well, I've just kind of touched on it a little bit there. We don't want to escalate this situation, do we? We do not want to escalate. And when I mean escalate, it means bring in more emotion. That's why it's important to have a gentle, some of your translations say, a soft answer. It doesn't matter whether it's an answer, a declarative statement you're making, or a question that you ask. Tone is important. You want it to be gentle. You want it to be more soft. That way, you're not instigating that individual. It's very, very important to keep that in mind. That word, that verb, I should say, for that second statement there in the proverb about how, about stirring up anger, okay, the stirring up part, that verb is often translated as to go up, like someone is traveling up to a city. They're traveling up from Jericho to Jerusalem, or they're ascending a mountain, going up. That's what it means to stir up. It means to escalate. That's what we don't want. It can lead people to anger. It can generate wrath. That's not what we want. So it's very important to keep that in mind. Tone is very important. Unfortunately, we have to have hard conversations. Conversations in which you're going to have to communicate things that the other party is not going to want to hear, but you have to say it anyway. What can you do to maintain a good tone, a gentle tone? What can you do to avoid escalating the emotional response? One of the things that I believe is super helpful is to switch from making declarative statements and move over to asking questions. By asking questions, you can still make your point, and you can drive the direction of the conversation. By asking questions, you're also communicating respect, that you genuinely want to hear what the other person has to say. Just a handful of days ago, I was having lunch with another friend of mine named Ed Briggs. He's also a pastor. And we were reminiscing a little bit about our experiences leading couples in premarital counseling. It's something that we require before we officiate someone's wedding. And we were both noticing, at least making the observation, that more and more couples who come to us and other ministers that we know have made the decision to live with each other, to cohabitate before they walk down the aisle. Now look, that's not God's plan. That's not healthy. I get it in the eyes of the world. It makes a lot of sense, but it's not good. How can we make our point? How can we challenge them? You can do it by asking questions. You could start by asking the couple, are you living together? There you go. Are you living together? I can remember one couple where the groom just quickly said, oh, no, we're not living with each other. And then the bride-to-be dropped her head in shame and said, yeah, we are. And so I was like, okay, guys, you got to be honest with me. Okay. Thankfully, most are upfront about it. And when they confess that they're living together, they're often expecting a full frontal assault, which I could do. I could say, look, are you guys crazy? This is not God's plan for your life. I can't believe this. Why didn't you tell me this ahead of time? What would that do? Well, that tone is going to increase emotion. It's going to escalate the situation. But I prefer to ask questions. Follow it up by saying, are you aware that there are studies in which they have shown that 50% of couples who cohabitate before marriage still see their marriage end in divorce? I've never met a couple who's aware of that. Not one. And so that's injecting a little bit of that. Hey, this isn't a safe choice that you think that you've made. And then I can ask them the question, why do you think that is? Get them reflecting. Get them responding to the question with their own thoughts. And then I can steer it. Again, not by necessarily making a declarative statement, but by asking further questions. And say, do you think that marriage is more about commitment? That that's what keeps couples together more so than discovering things about each other? See what I'm doing? I'm guiding it. And hopefully they'll understand that. And then I can move forward and I can say, or ask the question, I should say, what are you going to do to safeguard your relationship by strengthening your level of commitment with each other? See what I've done? I've gotten where I wanted to go. I've communicated what I've wanted to communicate with gentle questioning, direct questioning, to be fair, but not escalating the situation. Folks, I'm not trying to say that it's never appropriate to escalate a situation. I'm just trying to say I'm interested in persuading people. And if you want to persuade people, you have to have the right tone. I mentioned at the top of the video, when you are engaged in a disagreement with someone, one of the best things you can do is ask yourself the question, what am I seeking to accomplish? I think one of the best objectives you can have is to try to win someone over to the truth, to convince someone about a wise course of action that they should take. Now, unfortunately, you can do everything right, everything within your power to have a gentle tone, okay? Hoping to ward off wrath, okay? You can do everything you can to avoid escalating the emotional component of the situation. And yet that person is wired. I mean, they are angry at you and they are just vomiting their frustrations. They're just attacking you. One of the things that you need to understand in that situation, no matter how hard you want to convince that person, that's not going to happen in that moment. There's just too much emotion. So your objective needs to change to, let me get out of this situation because I'm wasting my time. And you'll notice that if what the person says is on a loop, if they keep repeating themselves over and over. So one of the things you can do is do a little bit of verbal judo on them. And so I would ask you to just ask them the question that you've asked yourself. You could say, you might even have to interrupt and say, excuse me just a moment. You've said a lot of things. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. What is your main point? What is the main thing you want to communicate to me? They'll probably be taken aback because if it's your mother-in-law who's criticizing you, she's not going to want to come right out and say, I'm arguing with you because I just can't stand the way you parent your children, who are my grandchildren. She's not going to want to come right out and say that. Or your coworker. He's not going to want to come right out and say, you know what, in all honesty, I'm just addicted to drama. I just like to fight. I just like to argue all the time. So I don't really have a point. No, force them. Make them focus on one thing. And as soon as they say it, you respectfully, repeat it back to them. Say, you just said this. I understand that this is your main point here. And then you say, okay, bye. And you just move on. Click, hang up. You may need to say, I understand your position, but I disagree with it. We are at an impasse. We can go no further. Because of that, I'm moving on. Or if you come to determine that it might be good to revisit this conversation or this topic at some point in the future, you can tell them. You can say, hey, let's take this up another time. But now is not the time. Have a nice day. See what you've done? You've communicated you understand them, but you've stated your position as well, and you said you're moving on. You're not asking them, you're telling them you are moving on. And they hopefully will respect that. If not, just move on anyway. Don't leave it up to them. Now, maybe you want to fire a bit of a challenging shot at them. Things have already escalated. Maybe you need to send a message to them. One of the things that you can do is maybe say to your mother-in-law, I understand that you don't agree with the decision I've made in raising little Jimmy. But I just want to remind you, I am his parent. So I am going to do what I think is best, and it is my hope that you respect that. But even if you don't, you just need to understand, it's my choice. I'm going to do it. Have a good day. Click. That's what you do. Unfortunately, you're going to find some people that you can't convince. Don't waste your time trying to convince people that you simply cannot persuade. It is a waste of time. It is basically casting your pearls before swine. Don't be foolish and try to do that. Honor the Lord. Honor the Lord. And just keep in mind the importance in all of your interactions. Tone. Why is a gentle tone important? Because you don't want to escalate the situation. You want to ward off anger. You want to ward off wrath because that pushes out reason. It pushes out openness of mind. God bless you.